In this video, I will use Affinity Photo to remove background areas. I will share an app that I use to grid my images. Then I shall create a grid to draw the Sacred Kingfisher. I will be mixing paints for each section of the painting, then painting the background, branches, and the Sacred Kingfisher. Meanwhile, as I began editing this video, this happened. Now the state of emergency has been extended to September 11th. I'm using the Painting brush tool that is 3/4 of the way down on the left editing icons. To make the brush tools larger or smaller, I'm using the bracket keys. For making the brush tool larger, use the right bracket key. I am removing all the background elements. When I need to zoom in, I simply hit Command+ on repeat until I have zoomed in to where I want it to be. For the smaller brush tool, use the left bracket key, pressing until the brush tool is as small as is needed. When using this Painting tool, click down on the mouse, hold it down, and move the cursor until the whole area has been highlighted. Then release the mouse and ta-da! It's gone. Affinity Photo is a great program. One of the reasons I really recommend this program is that you can buy it outright. There is no monthly fee. Its editing tools are quite expansive. I love how this program creates a convincing background. Now on to cropping the image. The fourth icon down on the left-hand side is the crop tool. I grab the corner to move in until I'm happy with the placement. As I am cropping the image, I am thinking about how I want the bird to be the major part of this painting. I want the bird's head and tail to be near the edges of the sketchbook. To export the image, click on File, move down the list to Export, and this screen will come up. It gives you a number of options. I've already chosen JPEG, but there's a click-down menu there. This program automatically sets the DPI to 100. I prefer 300. I type it in, then I hit Save. If you try to tab or hit Return to move out, the program goes back to that default 100 DPI. Name the photo, in this case, Sacred Kingfisher. Adding edited because there are several different versions of this image in this file. Now the image is ready to work with. Over to my phone now to add the grid onto the image. I happen to use the Artist Grid Tool app. I placed a blue heart to indicate what I'm activating on the program so that you can see where I'm at. To start off with, here is the Sacred Kingfisher photo that will be used. Go into the app, click on the bottom left triangle shape just below the heart to import the image into the app. Choose the image to work from. At the bottom in the middle, there's a square grid. Click on that to bring up the top menu. To make the grid have more squares, click on the 2x menu option. There are 3 different levels of gridding. Now, to make the lines appear more translucent, slide the button towards the left. To bring up the next menu, click on the double arrow button. This will help with making the image larger or smaller, as well as moving the image from side to side or up and down. Notice that the menus completely disappeared. I accidentally hit the image area. To bring the menu back, go down to the bottom square grid and click. The grid that I want to work from is 5 squares on the vertical. Continue to hit the plus button until the bird fills the 5 squares from top to bottom. To move the image up, click on the small arrow on the far left-hand side until it's in its proper place. Save the gridded image by clicking on the little disk image down at the bottom right. Click and hit Yes to save the image to the photo library. Head over to Photos, click on the image, hit Edit, and then the crop tool. The grid needs to be 5 squares on the vertical and 8 squares on the horizontal. Click Done to save the cropped image. The vertical measurement of my sketchbook is 14 centimeters, and the horizontal is 22.5 for this drawing. The vertical measurements are 2.8, 5.6, 8.4, 11.2, 14. The horizontal measurements are 2.8, 5.6, 8.4, 11.2, 14, 16.8, 19.6, 22.4. I work in centimeters. I actually find it much easier to work in centimeters because each centimeter has 10 millimeters, and it's just so much easier to work with something that works in factors of 10. This accommodates the 5x8 grid image the best. The math that I did was to divide 14 centimeters by 5, the number of squares, which gave a measurement of 2.8 centimeters per square. And here the grid is completed. I have placed the Sacred Kingfisher gridded image on the top left, now to draw the bird and the branch. What I like about working in a gridded method is that the lines help break down and provide great anchor points for the various shapes that I'm seeing in this image. And it allows for fairly accurate drawing. Also, it seems to be a little quicker for me. Using this method, I know with confidence that my bird will fit perfectly on the sketchbook page. I do like the fact that any corrections that I make, which could potentially damage the sketchbook paper, is done on a separate page, and so I don't have to worry about that. I always use 2 containers of water for cleaning brushes, inexpensive ceramic plates for mixing areas, and lint-free blue shop towels to manage the water on the brushes. I use a range of brushes, silver, black velvet, and the sadly discontinued Lowell Cornell pointed round, and Jack Richardson plein air travel brush set, both a flat and a round. The gouache paints that I used are Gram, Azo Yellow, Gamboge, Yellow Ochre, Permanent Green Light, Phthalo Blue, Raw Umber, Black, and Titanium White. I use a mechanical pencil and a blue fine ballpoint pen and 30 centimeter ruler. Before launching into the background, I want to take a few minutes to test out the mixtures from these chosen paints. I created a value series of neutral grays to use throughout the painting process. So the background palette that I'm going to use is Gamboge, Azo Yellow, Permanent Green Light, and Titanium White. As I begin to mix, one of the challenges is that the silver black velvet brush is very soft, which means that there is a struggle to grab enough white paint to create the light value mixture. Each of the colors that are being mixed need to be fairly low chroma, meaning that there will be neutral gray in all of the mixtures, but the color still reads as either yellow, yellow-green, or green. When I'm happy with the various background paint combinations, it is time to move on to creating the background. This time, the full background will be painted uninterrupted. The silver black velvet brush holds a lot of watery paint, which means that I can move quickly before the paint begins to dry. This softens the connecting edges of the paint just a bit. After the background is completely dried, I will use a 2B pencil on the back of the drawing and quickly add graphite to use for transferring. The blue ballpoint pen is great for drawing the Sacred Kingfisher. Then I come back to the 2H mechanical pencil to go over the lines and make them a little bit stronger. On to the branches. On the palette for the branches are yellow ochre, raw umber, titanium white, and the neutral grays. I mix together yellow and raw umber. Remember, raw umber is a low chroma yellow. Then adding in neutral gray to bring the chroma down and white to bring the value up as needed. Each little shift of color, chroma, and value helps to create the subtle shifts that I'm seeing on the image on the branches. As I start the second pass, I'm beginning to create textures of the bark. I actually don't know what type of tree the Sacred Kingfisher was perched on, but it has the most wonderful array of browns, grays, and yellows. Palette for the Sacred Kingfisher, phthalo blue, permanent green light, yellow ochre, titanium white, and as always, neutral grays. It's always worth taking the time to test the colors before leaping into a new painting. I keep a record of these color decisions that I make. I never know when I might come back and paint another Sacred Kingfisher, so why have to do this twice? Each mixture helps me confirm that the Sacred Kingfisher colors are being accurately rendered, and I'm happy with the results. As I begin to paint this Sacred Kingfisher, I'm transported back to the day that I spent with Andrew just around Sydney. He was able to share so many beautiful birds. This kingfisher really hung around and made sure I got some fabulous photos of it. I saw a forest and azure kingfishers that day, but neither of them hung around long enough to get decent photos of them. Another time I did manage to see a forest kingfisher in the wild up in Kakadu, and it was very photogenic. At the start of this video, I said that I had started the editing process, and then the whole city of Yellowknife was evacuated. As it happened, our grandchild was also visiting Yellowknife at the time. The fire situation had been growing and changing each day. Then the Emergency Management Organization with the government sent out an evacuation notice on Wednesday evening with a Friday at 12 noon deadline. Managing a 10-year-old in a fairly major crisis requires a great deal of calmness and focus, as you can imagine. This meant I didn't actually pack up the way I might have if I had actually considered that I might be gone longer than a week or so. Thankfully, there's lots of stores here in Edmonton, so I was able to go and pick up what I needed. The fire wasn't right on top of the city, but it was getting awfully close. That bit of distance allowed us to leave on Thursday morning. The evacuation notice was Wednesday evening, and we left on Thursday morning when it would be light out. Instead of leaving the evening before and having to drive in the dark for the majority of the trip. My husband has remained in Yellowknife working with the EMO. If you have a look at the map to find Yellowknife, you will discover we have a 2-lane highway that goes around Grayslave Lake. There's not a lot of communities along the way. One big challenge we have is big areas with no cell service. There were 2 places to gas up along the 525-kilometer distance from Yellowknife to the NWT border. The major place to gas up is at Fort Providence, and the lineup was well over 2 hours long. Our youngest son and I had filled jerry cans with gas, which allowed us to bypass that long wait for gas at Fort Providence. My husband is part of the EMO, had contracted a mobile gas station to be at Steen River, just over the NWT-Alberta border. I was easily able to make it to Steen River, which is 268 kilometers away from Fort Providence. Driving past Enterprise and seeing how the fire had roared through that small community, damaging 90% of the properties, was so horrifying. The big challenge that needs to be dealt with is the lack of cell service, which was made worse with Enterprise cell tower being destroyed. It was hard to keep my family notified about where I was and that we were safe. I was never so glad to get to Peace River and be settled into the hotel. On Friday, Burke's parents were out waiting for us when we pulled into the driveway in Fort Saskatchewan. For now, I am away from home, which means you'll notice that my sound is not quite the same as it normally is when I'm producing with a proper mic, but I'm making do. This also means my next video will be completely delayed until I get home and back to painting in my own space. We have no idea when we can return to Yellowknife. I think that's one of the toughest parts of this process, is the uncertainty of when life will become normal again. I am enjoying painting these birds from Australia. I photographed so many different kinds of birds while I was there. What I particularly like about the Sacred Kingfisher is this beautiful color. Though Yellowknife has interesting and some colorful birds, none really match the level of pigmentation of some of the Australian birds. I'm going to continue in this sketchbook to cover a broad range of different types of birds to help expand my understanding of the similarities and differences of each bird. Also, I want to give a real sense of the experience that I had when we were traveling in Australia this last winter. The difference in patterning, beaks, feet, and wing shapes will keep me going here for a long time. Also, I am appreciating that my skills are improving as my understanding how to paint with gouache is getting better. One of the big things is figuring out that different paintbrushes work the best. Digging into my watercolor brush collection has certainly been beneficial. And I think we'll just let the music play, and thank you for watching.